Rum. Sweet, funky, tropical, and sometimes even smoky. Rum is the cornerstone of cocktail culture, refined sipping, and truly a global phenomenon. Today we're talking about the history of rum, what it actually is, where it came from, and how it grew into the world's favorite sugarcane spirit. I'm the Spirits Professor, and this is the history of rum. Modern legal definitions vary by country, but at its core, rum is a distilled spirit made from sugarcane byproducts, most commonly molasses or sugarcane juice that's fermented with yeast and then distilled and usually aged in used whiskey barrels. That's the basics, but rum gets super granular from there. ABV, or proof, ranges widely, from 40%, 80 proof, for standard bottlings, to 75%, 150 proof, for overproof rums. Then, styles differ by raw material, yeast, fermentation method, distillation type, and aging. And all of that is before you even touch on the regionality of rum. It's a lot. But where did it all start? As with most boozy things, fermented and distilled sugarcane drinks predate most written records. We do know that cane-based fermentations popped up across ancient East Asia thousands of years ago. That's because we know that sugarcane originates in what's now Papua New Guinea and Indonesia. Ancient Austronesian peoples pressed cane to drink and then eventually fermented the juice into alcoholic beverages. As time marched on, those early boozy sugarcane drinks moved west towards China, where it met ancient distillation technology, then India, Persia, Arabia, and eventually into Europe and Africa. If you follow the route of sugarcane, you follow the route of proto-rum. We get a clearer history of early rum from Marco Polo's travels. He mentions a fermented cane wine in places like Persia, while classical references suggest that variations of cane-based drinks circulated in early trade networks throughout the Indian Ocean trade lanes and the Silk Road. But are we really talking about rum as we know it? Not really. These early localized sugarcane ferments aren't the rum we bottle and enjoy today, but they show sugarcane's deep role in early fermentation, global trade, and innovation around tying one on. Fast forward to colonial Brazil around 1520. Sugarcane plantations grew early and fast. Before the large-scale Atlantic slave trade, colonists enslaved indigenous labor to plant and process cane. From pressed juice and syrup, distilling began while the early colonial plantation economies pushed scale and technique. When the indigenous population collapsed, the Portuguese colonists started bringing in Africans as chattel slaves to replace the destroyed indigenous population. As sugarcane plantations spread, so spread African enslavement in rum making. That brings us to the triangle trade. European ships carried manufactured goods to Africa, traded them for enslaved people, transported those people to the Americas, the Middle Passage, then carried sugar, molasses, and rum back to Europe. Rum functioned as currency in the slave trade and plantation economies, used to buy labor, pay sailors, and conduct local trade. At one point, rum was a more common currency than gold, hence the term liquid gold. This is a harrowing chapter, and sadly, the global spread of rum is inseparable from European colonialism, indigenous genocide, and African slavery. Barbados in 1651 is a turning point for what rum is. By the mid-17th century, the island's sugar plantations were booming. Molasses, the thick byproduct of sugar production, accumulated. Enterprising enslaved distillers fermented the excess molasses and distilled it into a stronger and more stable spirit. Barbados became the center of rum production and spread techniques and barrels across the Caribbean, the Atlantic, and the world. A big part of that spread was thanks to European navies adopting rum rations in the 17th and 18th centuries. This was a big morale lifter for sailors, a binding ritual, and sometimes a catastrophe when overconsumed. Enter taxation and regulation. The Molasses Act of 1733 and later the Sugar Act of 1764 tried to control colonial molasses imports and tax the trade in ways that enraged colonial merchants. Restrictions on cheap molasses from the Caribbean pushed smuggling, political conflict, and contributed to tensions between the colonies and Britain. Colonial Americans had embraced rum fully by then, especially in New England. Rhode Island distilled rum from molasses imported from the Caribbean, producing styles popular locally and for trade. Rum financed merchants, fueled taverns, and even helped shape early American social life. Rum was so popular that George Washington's inaugural celebration featured a massive barrel of Barbados rum. Rum truly was America's original spirit. Sorry, bourbon. While the 18th century turned into the 19th, rum refined and became a mainstay of both trade and burgeoning cocktail culture. By the mid-20th century, rum exploded, again, thanks to tiki bar culture gripping the world after World War II. Rum was never bigger, more diverse, and more entrenched in the world's drinking culture. All of this means that rum has been a truly global spirit since, well, the beginning. While we could list the major rum-making regions, we'd pretty much have to list the whole world. Of course, each region has its own traditions and vibes, and we'll explore those in future episodes. In the end, rum's story is one of ancient agricultural roots, colonial boom, human tragedy, naval lore, global trade, and modern regional creativity. It's both a local craft and an international industry. And so, while acknowledging rum's tragic past, we raise a glass and cheer to rum's bright future. I'm the Spirits Professor, and this has been The History of Rum. Please like, subscribe, and comment below. Next week, we'll be diving into the history of gin.